going on, guys? It's Cynical, and today for you guys I'm going to be bringing you my impressions and overall thoughts towards Ratchet and Clank for PlayStation 4. This is a game that I've been looking forward to for a very long time now, and it's time. It's finally here, and it is freaking amazing. I have gone through the entirety of the game. I haven't touched challenge mode yet, but I have gone through the entirety of the game through the story mode, experienced it, and I have to say I am very impressed and very satisfied. So today I want to do a video just basically talking about how I enjoyed the experience. I wanted to do like a fully fledged review for this game, but basically I do leave to America tomorrow, so I really don't have too much time in order to actually go ahead and do like a full in-depth review. So I'm going to be basically just going over the core bullet points like story, gameplay, graphics, things I liked, things I disliked in this video, and just as a warning, guys, this video is going to be containing spoilers, so you have been warned. So first of all, let's jump into the story side of things, as the story is relatively important to, of course, most video games. Now I know prior to the release of this game, many people were confused in terms of like, how is this game going to work in terms of the story. Now what we do know is Ratchet and Clank for PlayStation 4 is a reboot, reimagining / remake of the very first Ratchet and Clank game. This is where a lot of people got confused. A lot of people thought that basically this was going to be Ratchet and Clank 1 with a whole brand new look to it, you know, better graphics and maybe a few new weapons. That's not really the case. See, the story for Ratchet and Clank for PlayStation 4 follows a similar path to that of Ratchet and Clank 1 for PlayStation 2. So when you go through this game for yourself, or if you've already gone through it, you'll pretty much pick up that there is tons and tons of different similarities between this game and the very first game for PlayStation 2. However, don't go into this game thinking that you're going to know exactly how the story is going to be panning out. We do have the primary antagonist for Ratchet & Clank 1 back in this game, who is of course Chairman Drek, and he does have the same intentions as he did in the PlayStation 2 Classic, and that was to of course destroy planets, then piece them together to make his very own planet. However, this time around we also have Dr. Nefarious, except he's not in his robot form, rather he's an alien this time around, which I found very interesting and very enjoyable, because Chairman Drek has always been a really cool villain to me, because, you know, Ratchet and Clank was one of the first video games I personally ever played, but then Dr. Nefarious is just such a hilarious villain, and just seeing like both of these guys working together kind of throughout the game is very interesting. I have to say though, this probably isn't Dr. Nefarious's best game that he has been in. I would say that Ratchet and Clank 3 or A Crack in Time still is where, you know, Dr. Nefarious shines the most, as he doesn't really get too much screen time in the PlayStation 4 remake. Still to the point though, I found it really enjoyable seeing both of these villains just in the same game, and especially seeing Dr. Nefarious as an alien rather than a robot. There's a ton of funny and humorous moments throughout this game. I actually found myself like sitting in my chair laughing my ass off and actually genuinely being intrigued with the storytelling of this game. For the main reason being is the story is actually told from the perspective of Captain Quark. So the game kind of starts off with Captain Quark in prison, and he's telling a story to one of the prison inmates, and that story is of course the adventure of Ratchet and Clank, and how of course Ratchet and Clank met Captain Quark and how they defeated Dr. Nefarious and Chairman Drek. But of course, because it is Quark, he adds in a whole ton of different sort of cool references and humorous moments and whatnot. And honestly, like, if you want a game where you just want to sit down, play, indulge in the game, you don't have to overthink or think too in depth about like what's going on, and you just want a good laugh, this game, I recommend it without a doubt. The story itself though is actually really good, and I think for the main reason being is while I was playing through this game, I was constantly getting hit with that nostalgic feeling, but then again at the same time, I was getting hit with that breath of fresh air, and I think this is something that shines about Ratchet and Clank for PlayStation 4. For anyone who's played the very first original Ratchet and Clank, you're going to be going through this game, and you're going to be like, wow, like, I'm feeling the nostalgic feels, but at the same time, there's so many different key differences that it's almost like a brand new game. And this is something that I've never actually experienced with a video game before, because I don't think anything like this has actually been done before. The game itself took me about 8 to 9 hours to complete, and for the most part, that's really not too bad. I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit worried about the game's length, as of course previous Ratchet and Clank games have been really short. I'm mainly looking towards Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus. That game probably took me about 5 hours to finish. I'm not even going to lie, and after the fact I was like, wow, is that really it? Like, honestly speaking, Into the Nexus was a fantastic last installment for Ratchet & Clank on PlayStation 3. It was just so short, and because of the fact that the game was just so short, it felt like a very underwhelming last installment for the future series on PlayStation 3. Because this game nearly pushed 10 hours, and that's not, of course, including the challenge mode, I have to say I'm very satisfied with the game's length. One thing that I do want to bring up though, and I find that is very important for veterans of Ratchet and Clank, is the fact that this game does not consist of all of the planets that was in the very original Ratchet and Clank. I was actually watching an interview with Insomniac Games, of course, Ted, and he was mentioning that basically the original planets are there in the game with a few new ones. Now, this is a misconception. I believe he was basically saying that there is going to be original planets with a few new ones in the game, and that is of course the case. I was actually very excited to go through all of the different planets, especially the logging site area. I can't actually remember the name of the actual planet itself, but I absolutely loved that for the main reason being is like, I don't know, the whole layout, the scenery, the music, and I was just kind of picturing that planet in, you know, the kind of engine of the brand new game for PlayStation 4, but of course it's not there. So don't go into this game expecting that you're going to be going through all of the places that you went through in Ratchet and Clank 1. You're going to be going through quite a few familiar different places, but you're not going to be going through all of them. Next up, let's move over to graphics. So I feel as if this category really speaks for itself. I mean, you guys are watching footage on the screen right now, and if you've of course played this game for yourself, then you'll know that this game looks freaking incredible. Insomniac Games have nailed the Pixar vibes on this game 100 times over. And it doesn't matter what review of Ratchet & Clank for PlayStation 4 that you watch, you'll always find someone saying that this game honestly feels like you're playing a Pixar movie, and that's for good reason, because honestly speaking, it feels like you're playing a damn Pixar movie. To be fair, I think this is probably the best looking PlayStation 4 game on the system as of right now. This game isn't photorealistic, and it's not going for the realism type stuff when it comes to the visual style of the game, but rather this game is just visually pleasing with its cartoon aesthetics. It just looks amazing. Like, I cannot even find a proper word. Like, it looks delicious. It looks satisfying. Like, if this was a food, if this game was a food, I would eat it. It'd probably be a dessert because it looks that damn delicious. But really, I don't have any more to say about the graphics. They are amazing. Insomniac Games have done a superb job. Well done, Insomniac. And finally, let's move over to the gameplay. So of course, this game plays like your standard Ratchet & Clank game. I would say that the gameplay is probably closer to that of the Future series on PlayStation 3 because that's just where the evolution of Ratchet & Clank has come to. But even with the gameplay of the Future series, it's not varying too far away from the very original gameplay of Ratchet & Clank for PlayStation 2. Now the key difference between the gameplay of the remake to the very original Ratchet & Clank 1 for PlayStation 2 is we can now damn well strafe. And that is amazing, because if you guys have played Ratchet & Clank 1 for PlayStation 2, you guys will know that the kind of combat of that game, it was good. It's like the base formula of Ratchet & Clank. But the one key thing that it's missing is lock strafe. And, you know, when you go to play any other Ratchet & Clank game, it has lock strafe. You go to play the very first Ratchet & Clank, it doesn't have lock strafe, and it's one of the most frustrating things to maneuver around ever. I have to say, thank God for Ratchet & Clank 2 with Insomniac Games actually introducing the whole lock strafe system, because if it was never introduced, honestly speaking, I don't think my interest for Ratchet & Clank would be as strong as it currently is. The weapons in this game are really cool, and I think weapons are a very important aspect when it comes to Ratchet & Clank, because Ratchet & Clank has always been known for, you know, having cool and quirky and over-the-top weapons, and this game certainly delivers that. I mean, I feel as if there is a decent amount of variety of weapons when it comes to the remake, not in comparison to older Ratchet & Clank games, but still, there is a lot of weapons to use in this game, and I find that a lot of critics and reviewers are saying that there's like hardly any weapons to use in this game, but to be fair, I just don't think that's the point. I mean, there's plenty to choose from. We've got weapons from, you know, the future series on PlayStation 3, like the Groovitron and Mr. Zircon. We've got weapons from Ratchet and Clank 1, like the Pyrocida. We've got brand new weapons, like the Pixelizer. So I feel as if the variety in terms of the weapons, you know, we've got a decent amount to pick from. And on top of that, I mean, we've got the whole weapon leveling and weapon upgrading to go through, which is extremely addictive and is probably the main reason why you would go back and play this game to dive into challenge mode. So of course you've got the weapon leveling, so the more you use a weapon, you'll gain XP, it'll get to a certain level, it'll change appearance, it'll become more overpowered. You then dive into challenge mode, purchase an Omega version of it, continue to level it up until it gets to its ultimate form, and then on top of that you've got weapon upgrading, which you need to collect Raritanium, which is kind of like a mineral or a collectible inside of the different world spaces for the game. You then spend that currency to upgrade the weapon within its weapon upgrade tree, which upgrades all sorts of things like the weapon spread, the you know, the way it kind of shoots, how fast it shoots, how much ammunition you have for the gun. And these weapon leveling trees, they're big, and they do take quite a lot of time to complete. You'll probably find yourself only completely upgrading about 3 to 4 weapons by the time you finish your first playthrough, so there are so many different reasons to go back into challenge mode to do the game all over again with all of your weapons, to find all of the collectibles, and to upgrade all of your guns to their ultimate form. In terms of collectibles, we have gold bolts and holo cards. Now the gold bolts are pretty self-explanatory. They've always been in the different Ratchet and Clank games. Sometimes they are named differently, like platinum bolts, but for the most part, gold bolts, they're kind of special versions of bolts, which are placed in secret kind of areas, and they are used to, of course, spend on cheats and little kind of extra little things within a menu. Now, holo cards are a brand new addition, and I think they're actually really, really cool. You collect all sorts of these different sets of cards throughout the game. Sometimes you can find them in secret areas, but for the most part, you'll actually be collecting them off enemies every so often. Every enemy has a slight chance to drop a card, and these cards consist of all sorts of different things, which then grant you all sorts of different bonuses, like unlocking Omega versions of different weapons so that you can purchase that in challenge mode, things like increasing bolt drop rate, things like increasing Raritanium drop rate. So these holo cards are really, really cool, and I think it's another reason to go back through into challenge mode, because by the time you finish your first playthrough, you would not have completed the whole card collection. Clank gameplay is also in this game itself, and I have to say it's a lot better than the Clank gameplay in Ratchet and Clank 1. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I've never really enjoyed Clank's sections of the different Ratchet and Clank games, as of course his sections kind of act as puzzle sequences. But to be fair, I have to say that I really did enjoy Clank's segments throughout this game. The puzzles weren't too overwhelming for me personally, but they were kind of just right, just challenging enough for me to be like, wow, I really do feel proud of myself for finishing that. However though, in conclusion, I have to say I'm really impressed with this installment of Ratchet and Clank for PlayStation 4. It's everything that I was expecting it to be. There's really not much that I have to say bad about the game itself, and for the most part, that's really good. My biggest worry about this game was definitely the game length and the overall kind of time you would spend playing through your first playthrough, but close to 10 hours I think is actually really, really good, especially with the budget price tag that it has. I'm going to be honest with you guys, there's really no reason why you shouldn't pick this game up. It is definitely one of the best PlayStation 4 exclusives. The only reason why you wouldn't pick this game up is if you don't enjoy action platformers, but even if you've never played Ratchet and Clank before, definitely give this a go. It's cheap, it's amazing. There's a decent amount of kind of depth when it comes to the weapon upgrading and leveling, enough to actually go back and play through the game again. So I would say that definitely pick this up, without a doubt. However guys, I've been Cynical. Be sure to post your thoughts and opinions towards Ratchet and Clank in the comment section down below. And until next time guys, I'll catch you later. Peace.